Remember the early days of the internet? In the 1990s, it felt almost quaint. A screeching dial-up modem, a handful of grainy websites, basic email.
You've got mail.
Maybe a chat room glowing late at night. Streaming movies sounded like science fiction. Data moved slowly, like a narrow creek, supported by modest servers humming in garages and back offices, drawing little power and even less attention. And then everything accelerated. By the 2010s, just 20 years after those screeching dial-up modems, smartphones had slipped the internet into every pocket. Suddenly, we were binge-watching Netflix, scrolling endless feeds on TikTok, hopping onto Zoom meetings, ordering groceries with a swipe, and refreshing social media timelines that never sleep. Then came the AI boom. Chatbots, image generators, predictive algorithms. The gentle stream became a tidal surge. Global data creation soared with no end in sight. Imagine all the world's yearly data burned onto DVDs. In 2000, they'd reach just 500 feet high, a skyscraper. By 2010, they'd dwarf Everest, 25 miles tall. In 2020, there'd be enough to wrap Earth 25 times. Today, they'd reach to the moon and halfway back. Data centers have morphed into industrial titans, sprawling warehouses stacked with server racks across the country and beyond, drawing as much power as entire cities, while massive cooling systems constantly gulp and evaporate enormous amounts of water just to keep machines from overheating. For frontline communities, the impacts are tangible.
The demand for artificial intelligence has sparked a boom in the construction of data centers all over the country.
While the massive facilities employ relatively few people, they do require a lot of energy.
These data centers also require lots and lots of very clean water.
Large data centers can consume up to 5 million gallons of water every day.
Data centers still rely on dirty fossil fuels that contribute to climate change.
The use of diesel generators to keep data centers online can emit harmful pollutants that can contribute to asthma and other respiratory issues. And with data centers often going up in rural areas, it's usually people in marginalized communities who are most affected.
Today's episode: digital overload. We'll explore in 2 acts what happens when the technology of billion-dollar corporations threatens local communities. We'll hear from activists working to reduce the harmful impacts of data centers and tell the stories that led them to the front lines. From A2, the nation's largest coalition of frontline communities fighting for environmental protection and health, I'm Zachary Crowe, and this is In Times Like These.
In times like these, we need a miracle. Ain't nobody gonna save us. We're the ones we've been waiting for.
Act 1. Something in the Water.
Well, let me introduce myself properly. So I'm Matlakli Ometepat, Matlakli Sekali. I'm Virginia Necochea, and I'm the executive director at the New Mexico Environmental Law Center. You know, I think it's important to uplift that I'm the first woman of color to lead the New Mexico Environmental Law Center in its 38 history.
Virginia's journey into environmental law doesn't start in a courtroom. It starts with elders, ceremony, and a connection to the earth.
My work has focused on justice and equity and being part of grassroots and organizing movements, especially focused on the protection of water. Much of that emanates from my deep connection to the land and water and traditions as a Mexican indigenous Chicana person. And so that really is connected to ceremony and traditions for me.
Virginia carries that connection to land and water into her role as executive director of the New Mexico Environmental Law Center, a pro bono public interest nonprofit law center that represents frontline and grassroots communities across New Mexico in defense of their fundamental rights to clean air, land, and water.
You know, bottom line, the clients that we're privileged to serve, they're fighting to protect their families and children and elders and their communities.
Virginia first came to the law center not as a director, not as a lawyer, but as one of those clients fighting to protect her community.
My client relationship with the law center began with a water issue that was impacting the South Valley community in Albuquerque in the Middle Rio Grande region in New Mexico, and that was connected to a massive housing development that sprung up on community in 2013 called Santolina. And the reason why many community members across the South Valley were very concerned was because of the water demands that this housing development would pose on the region. New Mexico faces major drought conditions, and we've been in a historic mega drought for a long time, and that's projected to continue and worsen over time because of also increased temperatures.
The Santolina project is planned on roughly 13,000 acres of land in Bernalillo County, New Mexico. If completed as originally envisioned, it would house tens of thousands of people, becoming a self-contained urban community, requiring enormous amounts of water, infrastructure, and schools. When Virginia and other South Valley residents learned about the project, they formed the Contra Santolina Working Group. Following the money, they discovered that the project was backed by Barclays Bank, a multinational financial institution with deep pockets and a history of funding large-scale developments.
We had reached out to the New Mexico Environmental Law Center because we knew that having their legal representation would be a game changer for us, because you can imagine we were up against deep pocket, major players.
The New Mexico Environmental Law Center argued that Bernalillo County had signed off without first proving there was even enough water to support the project, or fully considering how that demand would affect nearby communities. Every time the developers tried to push the project forward, rezoning land, approving master plans, locking in long-term agreements, the Law Center filed appeals that forced the county to pause, to hold hearings, to defend its decisions on the record. What officials had treated as routine paperwork has turned into years of legal scrutiny and court fights.
I'm really proud to say that, this grassroots effort and group, and again, working alongside the Law Center, we have been able to delay this housing development. There still hasn't been any breaking of the ground to build this housing development.
Today, Santolina exists mostly on paper. The master plan has county approval, but construction hasn't started. In other words, it's not dead, but it's far from inevitable.
And so really it's turning that pressure back on agencies, back on these boards that are responsible for ensuring that our very limited water supply in New Mexico goes towards residents first and doesn't sell out that water to proposed business ventures and developments that won't serve the general public.
That's Casey Hovden, a staff attorney with the Law Center. Listening to her talk, Virginia had a thought.
Yeah, this is reminding me, again, like as I'm listening to you, Casey, this is the data center site.
Yeah,
and that's what
one
I
and the
see,
same.
right? Exactly, and that's what I see as a common thread across so many different environmental justice battles, where you have deep pockets, industries, corporations coming into communities that are already dealing with major issues and injustices, and then they make major promises to elected officials and governmental agencies, and it's at the expense of already overburdened communities.
That same pattern showed up in Doña Ana County, where a proposed data center, backed by corporations with deep pockets, came head to head with a water crisis.
This has been an ongoing issue for decades in Sunland Park and Santa Teresa. Residents have seen their water look a milky white down to a very dark yellow. It'll have a foul odor at times, other times not, and it'll have a slimy texture, and folks have been getting sick from it. Their pets have been getting sick, their children experiencing rashes, vomiting, all sort of gastrointestinal issues from consuming the water in their own household.
Everyone in town had slimy water, discolored water. It was just out of control.
That's Vivian Fuller, a resident of Santa Teresa, New Mexico.
Everyone uses bottled water. I can tell you from my work in the community, approximately about 80% to 85% of the people do not drink the water. We're in a border town in New Mexico and Texas. There's people that travel to Texas to get water, and the elderly have difficulty carrying these 5-gallon water jugs, and on a fixed income, it's very hard to keep purchasing water. Unfortunately, we have to bathe with it because we don't have, well, at least I don't have enough money to purchase water to bathe as well.
In 2023, Empowerment Congress, a community organization that Vivian organizes with, issued public record requests. They revealed high levels of arsenic in local tap water. For nearly a century, ASARCO, a multinational copper and lead smelting company that extracts metals from ore with intense heat, racked up environmental violations across the nation. Its plant near Sunland Park in Santa Teresa followed suit. After being built next to a low-income community of color, the smelter released toxic metals into the air, into the soil and the water. When copper prices fell, ASARCO abandoned the plant, leaving the community to deal with the fallout.
After the late water winter crisis of 2023, the state of New Mexico came down and did an investigation into the Camino Real Regional Utility Authority. And what they found was that for the last year and a half, the public utility had been shutting off or bypassing the arsenic treatment facilities. And so instead they dumped an unknown amount of caustic soda and chlorine into the water supply in hopes that it would treat whatever arsenic was in the water, which is what led to the water being slimy and for people getting really, really sick really fast.
In a well-run system, operators constantly measure how much arsenic is in the water and add just enough chemicals to make it safe. Not more, not less. The Camino Real Regional Utility Authority, or CRUA for short, they didn't do that. Instead of monitoring arsenic, they shut down treatment plants to save money. They guessed at how much caustic soda and chlorine should be dumped in, and they sent contaminated water straight from the facility into people's homes. And the entire time, the bills kept rolling in.
There's an issue with CRUA overcharging folks, and I'm talking like thousands of dollars on one monthly utility bill in a single family home. And so on top of it, folks are paying a ton of money for water that they can't use and then asked to spend their own resources as well to go purchase third-party water.
We can't even trust them, even the billing that they're doing, because I've seen bills for $15,000, I've seen a $10,000 bill, I've seen a $6,000 bill. Recently, I saw a $4,000 bill, which was maybe about a couple of weeks ago. So the question that the community is asking is, are they even billing us right?
Empowerment Congress was hard at work organizing in their community, but they needed support. So they reached out to the New Mexico Environmental Law Center for legal help.
They've been great. This is a big battle. It's a big battle. It's been a big battle since the beginning. We've been pushing hard, and it's gotten us farther than we could have done it, on our own with a small group.
Right in the middle of their fight, another bombshell landed. Project Jupiter. On paper, it was marketed as a transformative AI data center that would bring jobs and growth. On the ground, though, many residents saw something else entirely. A thirsty, power-hungry project arriving before the existing water crisis was even fixed.
Whenever we found out about Project Jupiter, I guess you can say it was a hit to the face. It's irreversible damage that's going to be caused in this area. We don't have the water to be able to provide for this humongous data center.
Project Jupiter is being sold as a game changer. Billions of dollars in private investment, thousands of jobs, and hundreds of millions promised for local taxes, water systems, and community projects. At the same time, developers insist that it won't be a drain on the region's water, and talking up plans to tap brackish groundwater instead of pulling directly from the local drinking supply. But when you look at Project Jupiter's own application, it lists CRUA, the same troubled utility that serves Sunland Park and Santa Teresa, as its water and sewer provider. So even with all the talk about brackish wells and staying off the public system, the project still ties into the same taps that have been contaminated for years. In a state living through a historic mega drought, that's a big deal. Every extra gallon used to cool servers is a gallon that doesn't go to families, to farms, or to rivers.
There was a press release by Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's office in February of 2025 that said that there was going to be a digital infrastructure campus in Santa Teresa, and the state was making a $5 billion commitment for it. But that was really the only thing public we'd ever seen, and we still at that point didn't know it was a data center.
Casey and community members learned about Project Jupiter in late August of 2025, when it appeared by name on a Doña Ana County Commission agenda for September 19th.
The general public only found out about that 23 days before, and that's just not enough time for the community members to even wrap their heads around what is coming to town and what it means for their community.
Whenever we did some door knocking, to inform people, a lot of people did not know. I can just say about 75% of the people did not know what a data center is, much less know that there was a data center coming into the community.
Even with so little notice, when September 19th rolled around, the commission chambers were packed.
For those of you who are standing, who are not media and who are not Doña Ana County employees or security, I ask that you would please leave this room, go down to the multi-purpose rooms, find a seat in there. If there's not one available, you'll be able to watch from the TVs in the rotunda.
As the community piled into the room, there was still a lot unknown. The bond application didn't actually reveal who was behind Project Jupiter.
It named 6 companies, all incorporated in Delaware and created a week before, from August 15th to August 18th, with very local sounding names like Yucca Growth Infrastructure, Yucca is our state flower, to Green Chili Ventures and Red Chili Ventures, A, B, C, and D. Because as you know, Hatch, just up north of us, is the chili capital of the world, and we're very proud of our green and red chili down here.
The commissioners were voting on 2 ordinances, both impacting the future of Project Jupiter. The first ordinance authorized $165 billion in industrial revenue bonds, also known as IRBs. IRBs are a way for the county to attract big business. Here's how they work. The county issues bonds. The companies sell the bonds to investors worldwide, and they use the money from the investors to build the project. And they get to repay it from their profits. On top of that, the companies get cheap financing, rates 2 to 3% lower than banks, saving them billions in interest. Also, no property taxes on land, buildings, or equipment that could hit more than $100 million a year.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, when we first saw it on the Doña Ana County agenda, the $165 billion, we thought it was a typo, because there's just no way that amount of money could be funneled towards something in Doña Ana County, one of the poorest counties again in the state, and one of the poorest states in the U.S.
The second ordinance on the ballot would go one step further, reimbursing companies for land acquisition, construction, or renovation costs, infrastructure improvements, and other expenses incurred during the building process. The community was seemingly outmatched, up against unnamed corporations and a county board that seemed hell-bent on approving the ordinances. But they did have one ally, Vice Chair Susana Chaparro.
Point of order.
Yes, Vice Chair.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Vice Chair?
I move to table this for 60 days until the stakeholders, and when I mean the stakeholders, I'm talking about our community, can have further input.
Okay, we have a motion.
No one seconds her motion. It dies on the spot. A few moments later, the chair moves that the board go into a closed session, away from the cameras and the crowd. But Casey interjects.
I understood it's for limited personnel matter, but the public needs a larger notice for that.
It was on the agenda for the closed session.
Can we explain to the public what it is?
Sure, I'll have my attorney.
Thank you. Ms. Neal?
It was on the agenda as written. Closed session means that we are going to discuss attorney-client privilege matters, which, I'm sorry, but the public does not get to comment on that.
Can you speak to the overarching matter of the attorney-client privilege and why you're moving to closed session?
No. We do not have to specify what kind of matter it is. Thank you very much. We are going into closed session.
Noted.
After 40 minutes, they return, and Vice Chair Chaparro tries again.
I'm not going to discuss what went in closed session, but I would like to renew my motion to table this discussion again.
She stands holding a large document with hundreds of pages.
This is what I had to read last night. And I don't know if the stakeholders of Doña Ana County, meaning the residents and the constituents, were able to read that. I will add, not only did I have to read this, but I'm missing pages, blank pages that were supposed to contain attachments or exhibits. Page 230, page 231.
Point of order. Point of order.
Please, two. Order.
Again, there's no second, and the motion fails. A few moments later, the meeting shifts to public comment. The line is long, and people do not hold back.
Enough is enough. We residents from Southern Park, Santa Teresa are tired of seeing all this chaos going on.
You're working very fast to pass this thing. How about our drinking water? How come you didn't work that fast on that? Huh? You want to do this and fast.
How good is money if you don't have your health?
This is what you will be remembered for, not your MIT degree or your restaurant or your mayoral incumbency. It will be this decision.
Commissioners, you took an oath of office. That oath was not to corporations, not to out-of-state investors. It was to us, the people of Doña Ana County. If you vote yes today, you are not only dishonoring that oath, you are turning your back on your constituents.
What I'm really wondering about is you all and how it feels to sit hearing hours of public comment when you've already decided. What is that like? Do you just kind of let your eyes glaze over, just like check your phone, tough it out? And I wonder what it would feel like to change your mind.
Vice Chair Chaparro tried tabling the vote for a third time, but once again, no second. After nearly 8 hours, the IRB finally went to a vote.
Commissioner Gameros?
Yes.
Commissioner Reynolds?
Yes.
Commissioner Sanchez?
Yes.
Vice Chair Chaparro?
No.
Chair Shal Hernandez?
Yes. The motion does carry. Thank you.
The next month, the board passed a third ordinance. It lets Project Jupiter use state and local funds to reimburse permit fees that it would normally pay to build the project. 3 days later, the Empowerment Congress and community members in Sunland Park and Santa Teresa, working with the New Mexico Environmental Law Center, filed a lawsuit against the Doña Ana County Board of Commissioners. They're arguing that the county violated the law by rushing these ordinances through, relying on a single redacted application with missing pages and almost no real information about who was behind the project, how much water it would use, or what it would mean for the community.
We filed a lawsuit against a local county board based on their failure to comply with local and state law. And so we did not file it against the companies themselves, in part because we didn't know who was behind this project.
That changed in January of this year. The global tech giant Oracle finally went public, announcing that it is a main force behind Project Jupiter, and that the Santa Teresa campus would power artificial intelligence for its customer OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT. Since then, the New Mexico Environmental Law Center and their clients have kept fighting on multiple fronts, filing a second lawsuit in February that accuses the Doña Ana County Commission on violating New Mexico's Open Meetings Act when it abruptly went into closed session during that September 19th hearing. They're pushing back as Oracle's partner Acoma LLC seeks air quality permits for 2 natural gas microgrid plants by demanding unredacted applications, more time for public comment, and a real hearing in Santa Teresa before facilities that could emit more greenhouse gases than Albuquerque and Las Cruces combined are built just a few miles from homes in Santa Teresa High School, in a community that still can't trust the water coming out of the tap.
What's exciting to see is where the power truly lies, and that's in the communities on the ground. In Sunland Park and Santa Teresa, they have been at the forefront of this fight from the start and incredibly brave and courageous to push up against these deep pockets. We're looking at some of the largest tech corporations in the entire world coming in and pushing back, making very direct attacks on these communities, and they're still here. And I think just say they're not going anywhere and we're not going anywhere. So we're excited to see what's next.
Act 2, The Path of Resistance. Keyshawn Pearson grew up in Southwest Memphis, born to young parents, just 15 and 16 at the time. As a result, much of his childhood unfolded in the comfort and care of his grandmother's home.
That's where I learned a lot about love, a lot about family, community, and really felt what it was like to be cared for and considered as a person. And so Memphis, my community, continue to mean a great deal to me.
The values that Keyshawn learned growing up, care for family and care for community, they shaped the way that he sees Memphis today. When you love a place and the people who call it home, you start to notice what's harming them.
What I noticed early was a stench, right? There was like a smell in the air.
That stench was coming from Frank C. Pigeon Industrial Park, where 17 toxic release facilities emit chemicals into the air, soil, and nearby waterways just miles from the elementary school that Keyshawn grew up attending.
When I look back now, it's pretty upsetting because as a child, I felt like there's no way people would allow us to be harmed. And being here right now in this moment, fully aware and knowing that was not the case. And so there's a level of abandonment that when I look back, I see in my community.
Years later, that childhood sense that something wasn't right hardened into organized resistance. The spark was the Byhalia Connection, a proposed 49-mile crude oil pipeline routed through black neighborhoods in Southwest Memphis that were already hemmed in by refineries and smokestacks. If built, the line would have run directly over the Memphis Sand Aquifer, the underground reservoir that supplies nearly all of Memphis's drinking water, raising fears that a single leak could poison the city's taps.
State Representative Dr. Barbara Cooper called a special meeting because there was such a low turnout to the previous meetings that the Byhalia Connection Pipeline organization hosted. And this meeting made it to Facebook. Facebook made it to my family, and we showed up October 17, 2020 to T.O. Fuller Park.
Also in the park that day was Sarah Houston.
My name's Sarah Houston. I'm the executive director of Protect Our Aquifer. I am a certified water nerd and water warrior. I think water is life, and we all need to know what our source of water is. Where does it come from?
At the time, Protect Our Aquifer was entirely volunteer run. Sarah wasn't the executive director then, she was a board member. And during the day, she worked at the University of Memphis, a water research hub for the region.
We realized that it was going to go directly through one of the drinking water well fields. So one of the publicly owned Memphis Light Gas and Water well fields, where all the water is collected and sent out to homes and businesses in the area. And you're like, that is not a good idea. A crude oil pipeline in this sensitive drinking water system.
And it wasn't just the water at risk. That route cut straight through historically black neighborhoods in Southwest Memphis. Places like Boxtown and Westwood, where asthma, cancer, and industrial noise were part of daily life.
And you come here with this clean slate, but see, we've been through some things. Yeah. We've seen some things. Yeah.
One of the people who showed up in the park that day was Keyshawn's brother, Justin. He'd go on to be elected to the Tennessee state legislature.
We know what the ramifications are because we take our grandmothers to the grave at 60.
Tell them, boy, tell them.
We
tell them where your grandmama lay.
our uncles have diseases that you can't even find the percentage of people who have them.
Yeah.
See, because the air is poison.
Yeah.
We have to fight now.
You got to fight.
You have to fight now.
Yeah.
We have to fight now.
Yeah.
We have to fight now. This cannot stand.
Yeah.
On that day in the parking lot, myself and my family and my community decided we had to come together to fight back against this. And so right there, we established Memphis Community Against the Pipeline.
In the weeks that followed, what started as a conversation in a parking lot became a movement.
We started to have meetings very regularly, twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. We were a ragtag group of people who really cared about their community.
On paper, they were wildly outmatched by a billion-dollar corporation. The company had lawyers, public relation firms, and the power to haul people into court for their land. Residents had evenings after work, kitchen table meetings, and a refusal to move quietly.
There was a pipeline representative that said in the media, well, we just picked that route because it was a path of least resistance. And that became a rallying cry for the residents of Boxtown that were, extremely offended by that. I remember reading that just like in the article, and I was like, oh, you done messed up.
We are not the path of least resistance. We are a resilient, intelligent people who are more proximate to the solutions because we are proximate to the problem.
The path of least resistance, that's what they call Boxtown. That's what they call Westwood. That's what they're calling Memphis, the path of least resistance. And we know that we care about the air that we breathe. We care about the water that we drink. Because it is not just us that we are here talking about. It is not just us here that we are fighting for. The children that we have educating right over there. Those babies, ground that they walk on. We will be determining whether or not that is solid ground, or whether or not it's ground filled with oil, ground that is prepared to destroy our climate and our future. Come on. There are people. There are people who will care more about a dollar than about our lives.
We were being exploited in this process, and our water was in danger. And so, working alongside Protect Our Aquifer, we were able to reach the entire city. The crowds continued to grow. It started out with 4 people, 2 Pearsons and 2 community members, and grew into hundreds of people marching with us.
Eventually, their message went national. Prominent figures like Reverend William Barber and Vice President Al Gore showed up.
Why is it that 64% of the polluting facilities of these pipeline companies are located in or adjacent to black communities? Why is that? Because when they cite the polluting facilities, they go for the path of least resistance. This pipeline project is a reckless, racist ripoff. Reckless, racist ripoff.
It's time for everybody, red, yellow, black, and white, whatever your color is. Everybody that loves justice, that loves right, that loves people, to say, not here, not now, not ever, on our watch.
All that pressure finally broke through. In just over a year, the companies behind the Byhalia pipeline backed down and canceled the project. The company blamed changing market conditions, but by then local governments were denying key approvals and political pressure had made Byhalia more trouble than it was worth. The victory was monumental, but the historic harm was still there. Generations of pollution, sickness, and disinvestment that no single win could erase.
Memphis has a sordid history of being a slave state, even at post-emancipation, very much so entrenched with Jim Crow policies.
That's Latricia Adams, the director of Young, Gifted, and Green, a national organization focused on bridging the gaps between frontline communities, youth, and policy. When I spoke with her, she was quick to call out the long-standing racism in Memphis, but also the resilience of its people.
Communities in South Memphis, like Boxtown, like historic Westwood, and Riverside, was still communities full of so much pride. It was the foundation of the Black middle class. You started to see post-emancipation Black leaders establishing, their own storefronts, really starting to build up from the most horrific, experiences with chattel slavery.
But the more these communities tried to build, the more the system pushed back. Redlining cut off investment and basic services. And highways like I-55 were run straight through Black neighborhoods. At the same time, refineries like Delta, now Valero, and a cluster of chemical plants were sited in South Memphis, concentrating heavy industry in Boxtown, Westwood, and Riverside, while people elsewhere collected the profits.
These industries were strategically concentrated in Black communities like South Memphis. And unfortunately, even though it seems like this was so long ago, it really doesn't matter because the same playbook is being used.
Following the Byhalia pipeline victory, Memphis Community Against the Pipeline became Memphis Community Against Pollution and continued working with Protect Our Aquifer and Young, Gifted, and Green. In 2024, they found themselves in the office of newly elected Mayor Paul Young, asking him to fund an environmental justice plan for Memphis and pull together long-range planning to address air, land, and water across the city. But the mayor was about to announce something that would threaten all three.
We go into this meeting, we're super prepared, ready to go. And he said, there's something I want to let y'all know before the meeting ends. And it was kind of said in an ominous way where we're like, okay.
And then he announces that Elon Musk is bringing a data center here to the city of Memphis. I remember feeling shocked. I asked, where would the data center be? And he told me in South Memphis. And I immediately began to see a pattern emerging. I could see how the Byhalia Connection Pipeline, all these other polluters chose South Memphis. And now Elon Musk was coming to South Memphis.
This is a transformative moment for Memphis. This is a transformative moment for the world.
That's Ted Townsend, the president of the Greater Memphis Chamber of Commerce. Not long after Latricia, Sarah, and Keyshawn learned about the data center, it was announced in a press conference.
On behalf of the Greater Memphis Chamber, the primary economic development agency for the Memphis region, I am pleased to announce that xAI's Gigafactory of Compute, the world's largest supercomputer, is to be located in Memphis, Tennessee.
The same day of the announcement, Memphis Community Against Pollution, Young, Gifted, and Green, and Protect Our Aquifer issued a joint statement.
So in that joint statement, we talked about, the concerns around the location of xAI and how it's located in a historically disenfranchised community, historically redlined community, a community that is deemed the most polluted zip code in Memphis and Shelby County.
Our spaces are oftentimes encircled with industry. In Southwest Memphis, we are encircled with gas stations, power plants, oil refineries, sterilizers, and they create sacrifice zones where communities suffer and die because of the profits of billion-dollar corporations being placed above their health and their care.
These industries make a lot of white men rich. So it's easy to continue on that exploitation in this community because people's palms are getting greased, right? So Black suffering has always been a high yielding profit in South Memphis.
When Elon Musk came to Memphis, he was already behind. In order to compete against the frontrunners like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google, XAI would have to move fast. To train his AI called Grok at scale, he would need massive computing power and a place where he could build a giant supercomputer in months, not years. In Memphis, he found a vacant industrial site and a city willing to fast-track the project at the expense of South Memphis residents. Here's Ted Townsend again from the announcement.
In less than 90 days, the Greater Memphis Chamber's Economic Development Team moved at lightning speed to ensure Memphis would be in a position to be selected by XAI. Our chamber is built for this. By providing remarkable coordination, swiftly providing solutions, and rallying partners faster than any other community, we made certain Memphis was the company's top choice.
The data center known as Colossus One was built in just 122 days. Musk chose Memphis because the city gave him exactly what he wanted: speed, space, and political green lights, limiting the democratic process and harming communities. The story Musk is telling, though, sounds very different.
So the mission of XAI and Grok is to understand the universe. We want to understand the nature of the universe so we can figure out what's going on, where are the aliens, what's the meaning of life, how does the universe end, how did it start? All these fundamental questions. We're driven by curiosity about the nature of the universe, and that's also what causes us to be a maximally truth-seeking AI, even if that truth is sometimes at odds with what is politically correct.
The way that Elon Musk describes it, XAI sounds almost cosmic, but the impact of that ambition lands in very specific neighborhoods, on very specific bodies.
Well, we needed a building. We can't build a building, so we must use an existing building. So we looked for factories that had been abandoned, but the factory was in good shape, like the company had gone bankrupt or something. So we found an Electrolux factory in Memphis. That's why it's in Memphis, home of Elvis.
That once empty factory sat on one of the most unique drinking water sources in the world.
Memphis is one of the only municipalities on the planet Earth that gets 100% of their water from a groundwater source. That's drinking water that we won't get back, not in this lifetime. And so we continue to fight to protect it. We are continuing to see our resources that are supposed to sustain our lives be used to sustain a machine.
For XAI, that machine isn't just computers, it's also the cooling system behind them, cooling millions of gallons of drinking water just to keep the processing chips from overheating.
They said they're going to need up to 1 million gallons of water a day. In the permit for this water recycling plant, they said actually on a peak demand day, they might need upwards of 5 million gallons of water a day.
In late 2024, Colossus One came online as the largest AI supercomputer in the world. To power the facility, XAI brought in more than 30 methane gas turbines mounted on trailers. Local officials at the Shelby County Health Department treated those turbines as non-road engines, a category used for portable equipment, and allowed them to run for up to 364 days without a standard air construction permit. That meant no review under the Clean Air Act and no meaningful chance for the public to weigh in before the exhaust started pouring out.
We were literally just grasping. But what we did understand was that our Shelby County Health Department is in charge. They oversee our air pollution quality. And so we started to reach out. Dr. Michelle Taylor in the health department basically sent us a letter saying, we don't know what to do. We don't think they're doing anything wrong. And essentially that, it's in the EPA's hands to decide.
They met with the EPA, which said that they would do an extensive review, but their response wouldn't come until 2026, 2 years later. In the meantime, that temporary permit finally came to an end. In January 2025, XAI applied for a permit to operate 15 methane gas turbines for 5 years. And in April, for the first time, the Shelby County Health Department held a public hearing.
That was because we demanded the public be heard. And that was because we organized. That was because we challenged the status quo. XAI had come into Memphis, had folks sign NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. The crass way that it was announced didn't allow people, and especially our community, to vet the project in any way. And so this was our first time at a moment of transparency.
The hearing was also the first time XAI addressed the community publicly. Brent Mayo, XAI's senior manager of site builds and infrastructure, the person overseeing operations in Memphis, stepped up to the mic and read a prepared statement, but he was quickly drowned out by the crowd before scurrying out the door.
Hello, XAI is committed to meeting the highest standard for emissions. XAI is going above and beyond the required emission control.
It's time to start telling the truth. The truth is that XAI, who just ran up out of here, they have no controls that prevent air pollution or decrease air pollution in their factories. None. That's the truth.
See, I got asthma. My mama got asthma. My grandma at home, 87 years old, got asthma, and she never had it before. I can't breathe at home.
We've shown up here today because we're tired of going in and out of hospitals, going in and out of funeral homes. We've been paying taxes and we've been dying, and what we're saying is that stops now.
It didn't take long until those lived experiences, the asthma, the hospital visits, the lung cancer, turned into hard evidence. Sharon Wilson, the director of Oil Field Witness, helped make the invisible visible. She brought an optical gas imaging camera to the site, capturing swirling plumes of methane and toxins pouring out of the turbines.
These methane gas turbines are not harmless, and it's not natural gas. Methane gas is a fossil fuel. That is what our community is dealing with. That is what our community is breathing in.
One, in my opinion, which is so egregious, is formaldehyde. My God. I mean, not even up for debate. It is undisputedly a carcinogen, very much so cancer causing. Imagine breathing that on top of the existing pollution that's already heavily concentrated in this community.
A few months later, the county signed off on an air permit for 15 turbines at Colossus 1. Young, Gifted, and Green and the NAACP, represented by the Southern Environmental Law Center and backed by Memphis Community Against Pollution and Protect Our Aquifer, filed a formal appeal, arguing that Shelby County broke the law when it let XAI treat its methane gas turbines as exempt non-road engines, thereby dodging the Clean Air Act review that would have otherwise applied. In December, after a second public hearing, the Memphis and Shelby County Air Pollution Control Board voted 6-1 to deny the appeal, calling it moot and leaving XAI's permit in place. Just 1 month later, In January of this year, the EPA finally chimed in, 2 years after Keyshawn and others had reached out.
The United States Environmental Protection Agency announced and affirmed that the methane gas turbines being used at XAI did require a more stringent permitting process according to the Clean Air Act. We were right the whole time.
The turbines were operating illegally. It is just such a disappointment and, dare I say, embarrassing that the Shelby County Health Department is very inadequate and they don't know how to interpret the law, and furthermore, wasted taxpayer dollars with the attorneys that they had that, represented them in the appeal back in December of 2025 when you clearly broke the law.
In January, the same month that the EPA issued its statement, XAI brought a second data center online, Colossus 2. Musk now controls a massive amount of computing power, a supercluster of hundreds of thousands of high-end GPUs. To power data centers at that scale, XAI is no longer relying only on the original bank of turbines in South Memphis. In March of this year, Mississippi regulators approved a new gas-fired plant in South Haven, just over the Tennessee state line, authorizing 41 natural gas turbines to help power Colossus 1 and 2.
They moved right up the street across state line and did the very same thing that they had done in Memphis. It's embarrassing, that a city that brags on itself as being like the quote unquote blackest city in the country with black leadership would not only exchange the lungs of black people for money, but then create a blueprint for this oligarch to do the very same thing to our neighbors in DeSoto County and South Haven.
The community has consistently pushed back, calling for a move to renewable energy. And XAI has announced plans to build a solar farm in South Memphis.
XAI announced, I believe, somewhere around 200 megawatts of power. That, compared to the 1.2 gigawatts of power that they're going to use 41 methane gas turbines to generate, is nothing. It's literally non-consequential when you think about extreme levels of toxic pollution that is going up in our air every single day. We have to be clear-eyed about what we're seeing. This project continues to grow like a cancer, a literal energy vampire.
That energy vampire is continuing to expand beyond Colossus 1 and 2. Last December, Musk announced that XAI had acquired a third building adjacent to the existing Memphis complex, an 800,000 square foot shell codenamed Macro Harder, often described as the de facto Colossus 3. Conversion of Macro Harder into a live data center began earlier this year. If completed, it would push the broader Colossus system towards 1 million GPUs and nearly 2 gigawatts of power draw, anchored in both Memphis and South Haven.
I'm just really thankful to get to work in coalition with some really brilliant people. And, sometimes a change feels incremental. We want the revolution, but it is totally worth it.
That incremental change that Sarah is talking about, it is happening in Memphis. When Memphis introduced an ordinance to steer part of XAI's property tax haul back to the city, the coalition fought for a percentage of that money to go directly to the neighborhoods living next to the data centers.
We advocated that a percentage of that goes to community, and we fought tooth and nail for there to be a community advisory. We don't trust the government to actually do the appropriate thing with allocating funding where it needs to go.
That money can't undo decades of harm, but it does something that has never been done in Memphis before. Some of the wealth that XAI is making in South Memphis now has to flow back to the people living with the fallout.
That was a win. However, that's not over either, because the ordinance passed against the wishes of the community, where we felt like 75% of the revenue should go to the impacted communities and 25 could go to the city's, general operation funds, but they flipped it. So only 25% would be going to community and 75 would be going to the city. We still don't support that. So even actively now, we're still advocating for an amendment to that ordinance.
This was a consistent theme across all my interviews. Celebrate the win, while at the same time refusing to accept breadcrumbs.
My grandmother died, from lung cancer. My dad died, was healthy, never smoked, never drank. My mom, every single one of her aunts, my great aunts, they all died from cancer. Every single one of them. And this is the story of so many people that live or are from or have family in 3A109. This is very much so a genocide. If we don't stop this, then people are going to continue to die.
We are living in the after effects of the industrial era. The after effects are the fact that both of my grandmothers died in the early 60s because of cancers. The after effects are my aunt, who recently was diagnosed with breast cancer. The after effects of not learning that burning fossil fuels is destructive to our communities and our planet.
The cost is far too high to not keep fighting, to not keep pushing back. On paper, XAI might sound unbeatable, but Memphis Community Against Pollution, Protect Our Aquifer, and Young, Gifted, and Green, they've battled giants before.
Since our inception, we have gone up against billion-dollar corporations who felt too big to fail, who felt that there is no small Black community that can stop them. What I know is that the Byhalia Connection Pipeline was a billion-dollar corporation. We defeated them. So we've been up against Goliath before, and we got our smooth stones. And we are not going to quit until we win.
In Times Like These is a production of A2, or Anthropocene Alliance, the nation's largest coalition of frontline communities fighting for environmental protection and health. The series is hosted, produced, written, and edited by me, Zachary Crowe, with additional support from Arif Ullah, Brooke Butler, Shelby Snyder, and Aize James. Our theme song, In Times Like These, is by Reverend Sekou. Special thanks this week to Virginia Nicochea, Casey Hovden, Vivian Fuller, Jose Saldana Jr., Sarah Houston, Latricia Adams, and Keyshawn Pearson. Check out the show notes to learn more about the work of New Mexico Environmental Law Center, Protect Our Aquifer, Young, Gifted, and Green, and Memphis Community Against Pollution, all of whom we're proud to count as A2 members. Thanks for listening.